Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Happy Friday. In retrospect, Joe Biden's first-term policy agenda seems very optimistic, almost comically optimistic. Shortly before his inauguration, Biden announced something he called the Build Back Better agenda. Of course, we mocked it at the time. But looking back, it was in some ways a hopeful document. America must have been a very rich country back then. And by back then, we mean last year. There weren't a lot of essentials in Biden's agenda. The first three things that any normal nation needs and thinks about obsessively are food, water, and energy. That's the standard. In China, for example, every government policy, foreign and domestic, is designed above all to secure adequate reserves of food, water, and energy. And that makes sense. The Build Back Better agenda was the opposite of that. It did not suggest any concern at all about whether Americans might have enough to eat or could afford enough heating fuel to keep from freezing to death over the winter. Biden's agenda was focused on the kind of added extras you get to when you fixed everything else and then still have trillions left over. Build Back Better promised us something called environmental equity, whatever that is. It demanded amnesty for millions of illegal aliens because, at the time, the American economy seemed robust enough to share with the entire world. Universal health care for Honduras. Biden called for free solar panels for everybody and taxpayer-funded pre-K for all American parents, and so on and on. Build Back Better was the neoliberal version of flying cars. It was a dreamy Christmas list of luxuries that for a moment in time seemed almost within reach. A lot has changed. Nobody's talking about flying cars anymore. Here's Joe Biden from yesterday.
With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. And because both Russia and Ukraine have been the breadbasket of Europe in terms of wheat, for example. Just to give you one example.
Food shortages, Biden said, quote, they're going to be real. Once again, in case you missed it, to repeat, food shortages, not in Sudan, in Cincinnati, in Reno, in Spokane, and Norfolk, and of course in our big cities too, where not a single person who was born here has any idea what a food shortage is. Our problem has always been having too much food. Now we won't have enough. We know that because the President of the United States just told us that on camera. So what is this going to mean? How do food shortages affect a country? Well, if you're interested, go online and read about it. All of recorded history will answer your question. A food shortage is not like deciding to skip dessert. It's not a diet. It's not voluntary. A food shortage is different. It's scary. Food shortages topple governments. They turn moderates into revolutionaries. A food shortage is a big deal. You don't want one. But now we're getting one, just a little over a year into Joe Biden's presidency.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principles, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. God bless you all, and may God defend our freedom, and may God protect our troops.
But a couple weeks ago, Toria Nuland, that's the Undersecretary of State who oversees Ukraine, mentioned in a Senate hearing that there are U.S.-funded BioLabs in Ukraine. And whatever's in these labs, Nuland said to Marco Rubio, is so dangerous, she's worried it'll fall into the wrong hands. People could get hurt. Now, we saw the tape of Nuland saying this, and we were really surprised. We'd never heard anything like this before. BioLabs in Ukraine? What? Why? So we brought it up on air, and we asked, among other things, why didn't the Biden administration secure what was ever in these labs before the Russians invaded? That seemed like a fair question, maybe an important question. For asking it, we were immediately denounced by so-called reporters as disloyal agents of Vladimir Putin. They accused us of repeating discredited Russian disinformation about the existence of bioweapons in Ukraine. And they knew this because Pentagon Flax had handed them a, quote, fact sheet that told them so. So they read the talking points dutifully, as they always do. In fact, we hadn't even mentioned bioweapons. We just quoted what Toria Nuland told the Senate and asked what it meant. The whole thing was absurd. But the experience did get us thinking, what is the truth here? Why exactly are we paying for biolabs in Ukraine, of all places? How long has this been going on, and what's the purpose of it? So we started poking around to find out. We did. We just spoke to someone who knows the answer to this question, someone with direct first-hand knowledge of this topic. It turns out that our government has for some time funded biolabs in Ukraine that do, among other things, research on, yes, biological weapons. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's true. So why is the U.S. government doing this in Ukraine? The answer, because no one wants to do bioweapons research in this country. It's too dangerous and it's too unpopular. For decades, the U.S. government worked on bioweapons at places like Fort Detrick in suburban Maryland, or underground at the Army's Dugway Proving Ground outside Salt Lake City. But after a series of accidents and controversies, the government decided to move bioweapons research offshore. Ukraine, among other countries, was a perfect place to relocate. Because Ukraine is not a democracy, the Ukrainian government can host all the bioweapons research it wants. There's nothing ordinary Ukrainians can do about it. That's the truth. Now, we're not shocked that our government is lying about this. A bioweapons program is by definition a national security matter, so you do not expect full transparency. That's okay. What we're shocked by is the Biden administration's willingness to attack anyone who presses them for answers as an agent of a hostile foreign power. Get out of our way or we'll accuse you of treason. That's over the top. That's their MO. Not just the White House, but the toadies in the press corps who do their bidding. Denouncing American citizens as disloyal for telling the truth. No wonder so many elected Republicans obey them. They're afraid not to. But there's more to the story. How much more, we're not sure. But the National Pulse is reporting tonight that apparently a private equity firm run by Hunter Biden funded some of the research into pathogens in these biolabs. What are the outlines of that story? We're not sure. But we know it's legitimate to ask what it means. Why wouldn't it be? You're not a Russian agent repeating discredited Putin talking points if you ask. You're a good citizen, so we're going to continue to ask. We hope that others will too.
See when you're there, and some of you have been there, you're going to see women, young people standing in the middle in front of a damn tank, just saying, "I'm not leaving. I'm holding my ground." They're incredible. We are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. So anyway.
When Jesus said the night comes when no man can work, and by the way, people say, "Oh, you're so angry." You bet I am. I'm angry at how easy our country, the once greatest nation in the country, basically sat by and allowed a small majority of basically pedophiles, Satanists, Luciferians, transgendericators, and others that wanted to absolutely turn the world upside down for the worse. They wanted to destroy the foundations, and the scripture's very clear. And ladies and gentlemen, you're finding it out now. Some of our brothers and sisters are coming to the knowledge, hey, there's something really bad going on. Well, no offense, most of them had the opportunity to come to that conclusion years ago. So if we could start out the program today with William Casey, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency's, entire conglomerate around the world, I think this will help people understand, because again, we make statements because I just don't believe that. The problem with America is it's steeped in unbelief and denial. It's steeped in basically an entertained disassociation with reality. I call it reality avoidance disorder. And I believe that's as accurate as you can come up with. But Eric, will you put Casey's statement up and then leave it up for at least a minute? Thank you, sir. We'll know our information program is complete when everything the U.S. public believes is false. I'll say it one more time. We'll know, quoting William J. Casey, former director of CIA, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything U.S. public believes is false. We believe the lie about the whole, if you will, that it wasn't a bioweapon. Now it's a bioweapon. We believed you have to wear a mask, a face diaper. We believed you had to stay inside. We believe that dissociation of humanity from the family of God did more damage to people's brains than even the lack of what they could have done outside, because people are not meant to be isolated. Even God, in his wisdom, when he created Adam in the garden, he said it's not good for man to live alone. And he created he created Eve out of Adam's ribs. So what we're watching is a complete destruction of the human family because it's a reflection of God's creative order. So, Doug, this should be emblazed on everybody's mind. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything U.S. believes is false. We've heard that we're fearmongers. We've heard that we're conspiracy theorists. You know, they can go basically drop dead as quick as they can because the issue is it's true. Everything the American public concerning the COVID narrative, what they believed was a false lie, manipulated, and I would say this, articulated end of national sovereignty and identity. And that's why the globalists are having a fit over Russia. Now, I want to clarify something.
If I can mention that.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Okay, that quote.
I'm on a roll. Stop me.
Believe me, I don't want to do that. So that quote, now, if you would put that up on one of the social media platforms, they would say, we cannot attribute that quote to Bill Casey, okay? We can't do that. Now, but dig, folks, dig. Don't take that as your, end all. Here's the backstory. Leave that quote up if you don't mind there, Eric the Tech. Here's where and who this was said in front of. It was February 1981. Newly elected President Ronald Reagan had his new cabinet secretaries basically to report to him on what they learned about their various agencies in the first couple of weeks of the administration. Now, the meeting where this was said was held in the Roosevelt Room in the West Wing of the White House, not far from the cabinet room. A woman by the name of Barbara Honegger was present. That quote was said during a meeting between Casey, Reagan, Honegger as an aide, I suppose, a cabinet aide, assistant. And Casey first told Reagan that he had been astonished to discover that over 80% of the intelligence that the analysis on that the CIA produced was based on public sources like newspapers and magazines. So that is why he said what he said. It was about the media, the legacy media. So, folks, do not accept the so-called fact checkers' story on this. This was stated in the presence of Barbara Honegger, and Honegger, in turn, told senior White House correspondent Sarah McClendon, you remember her, who was a close friend and colleague of hers, who in turn made it public. That is the genesis of the quote, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He made it. That's it. Period. Go ahead, sir. Wanted to clear that up before you
thank you for that
emails.
Because that's true. And can I tell anybody that believes the fact checkers, I think your brains have already been sucked out through your head, and you might as well quit thinking. Now, I am in a combative mode today because, in essence, Doug, that is one of the truest statements. We're seeing it played out. We were told that there's going to be no food shortages. We were told months ago that, hey, it's just a temporary disruption. I want to make this clear. Let me make it incredibly clear. There will be no filling of the empty shelves. That is by design. You're watching the greatest wealth transfer, and what we're going to call it is piracy. We're watching the reintroduction of global piracy. Now, I'm in total agreement when Vladimir Putin tells the truth, he's telling the truth. It doesn't matter that you hate him because he's a Russian, but how does this even go along with, quote, Christians being pro-Ukrainian and not understanding? Now, there's a difference between the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government when they're on record as saying they are the first new world order state. That is what has been stated. When George Soros was the funding source behind it, and for the record, ladies and gentlemen, it's not fake news. Russia and China have both issued arrest warrants. What that means in their world is that I think Soros had better be hiding someplace, but by the way, they'll find him because they intend to basically bring him. Just remember, he wants the world to make war on Russia and China in order to establish the new world order. And I'm just telling you point blank, Doug, that was also claimed to be a false story.
Yep.
So I think what we're doing right now is we're coming into a time period when everything that will be in the mainstream has to be thrown out. Let me give you a good example. $1 billion was paid to all of the mainstream news networks, magazines in New York's, including, I better say it carefully, Fox News, or FAUX, faux news, false news, okay? Outside of probably, I would guess now I'm down to one, Tucker Carlson and maybe Gutfield, that's two. That's about the only two I even will listen to. I've thrown out all the rest, and I don't listen to
I got to toss in Jesse Waters, but go ahead.
Yeah, Jesse Water. And my apologies to Jesse, because outstanding. And I mean that. But here's the thing. $1 billion buy-off controlled the narrative. And I'm on record as saying, I am so furious at the BS anti-Russian narrative, which is covering up the treachery and treason of the Chinese control of the United States government and our highest officials. I am absolutely fed up with the, again, the dismissal of the whole, quote, Russian steel dossier. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not that, people openly said who had access to voting machines. We watched our nation be destroyed and taken over by a small but well-financed majority. And now we're going to pay the price.
And put this in the back of your mind, okay? Because I don't know where this fits in. And I got a couple of emails on this. Okay. Well, I got two things. The first thing here, what you were saying earlier about the people in the media. All right. I have it on authority, good authority, 100% slam dunk that there were places like Newsmax, for example. That's verified. Fox News, who received money from HHS to promote or to cancel the people who are against that mutagenic shot they call a vaccine. All right. Now, here's the second part to that. Money also went to individuals and called social influencers on Twitter, especially the blue check marks, but some conservatives in the alternative/Christian alternative media. I wanted to let you know about that because I didn't tell you about that. So there's that, which lie by omission, it's still a lie. Okay. The second thing is the question I've been receiving from people. Now this addresses it when you feel when convenient. What is the as I look at things too, I've got this question. Putin is saying, okay, oil, rubles, or gold only? What's the impact of that? So that's the question. Keep in the back of your mind. Answer whenever you feel. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I'd like to answer that right now.
Okay.
Basically put it into context of the biggest liar in history. And I believe there's no contest to that statement, which would be the contemporary entity in the White House who is now in Europe, maybe on his way back. But let me make something clear. I understand the gold market. I understand the comings and goings of it. I know what goes on behind the scenes because I've been in it, Doug, for 40 years, okay? And I'm 70 now, and I started in my late 20s, early 30s. Actually, I think it was 29 when I started in the gold and precious metals business, maybe even a couple of years younger than that. But what I'm trying to say is that means nothing. Russia belongs to Brazil, the BRICS nation, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and also South Africa, by the way. That's the S in BRICS, plural. But also the China card is that China needs Russian oil and gas, and the United States cannot provide for Western Europe what's going. So Russia is saying this: we're going to accept our own currency for our oil, for our fertilizer, for our wheat. That's their currency, the ruble. And the ruble is in essence being now revaluated because Russia has the ability to trade gold for rubles. It's not backed yet by gold. The ruble is not. But they've gone around the entire petrodollar, and petrodollar is dying before everybody's eyes. The petrodollar is a word and a term that most people don't understand. Prior to the destruction of the United States of America, and I believe that started in earnest under George, the first president, George W. Bush, or was it George H. Bush? Yeah, it was H. Bush, the father. And when he opened up China and began the surreptitious, behind the scenes transfer of high technology to China. China just didn't grow, ICBMs in the rice field next to the, polluted river to its right of the rice field. So what Russia is doing is saying anybody who wants to buy anything that they sell, and by the way, the entire, and this is something people need to understand, the chip industry, the integrated chip industry that you're hearing so much about, that in itself, if it does not get remedied, and it won't, Doug, by design, is absolutely dependent upon 95% neon. 95% neon pretty much comes to Ukraine/Russia, but Russia controls the distribution. Russia also controls the distribution of some of the most important strategic metals. Most people don't understand 1,200 pounds of strategic metals that are not, let's say this, mined in the United States have to be imported. That's how many pounds of rare earths and strategic metals go into an F-35 fighter. Well, the point is guess what? Our whole defense industry now is coming to a standstill if it depends on, rare earths and what I would call proscribed metals that aren't being imported into the country anymore. And ladies and gentlemen, if you think that this sanctimonious bunch of horse manure that we're putting on Russia, which is so wrong on so many levels, if you think that that's going to put food on your table, it's the exact opposite. Doug, I have a rancher in Montana who sent me, actually he's a wheat farmer and a rancher, but they sent me an email a couple days ago, and they said we went from $200 an acre to fertilize. Now it's $2,200 an acre. Now, this is from a farmer in Montana, wheat farmer. And I don't know if people know this, but Montana is a really big agriculture state. So what I'm saying is this, is when Russia said we will take rubles for our, I'm going to answer your question specifically, we will take rubles, that will force people to buy rubles because that's what you have to pay Russia in, or we'll take gold. So anybody who's got another currency has to convert to rubles. What Russia is doing, and I want to say this, when I see genius level economics, I'm going to call it genius level economics, because in essence, what they're doing is they're revaluing the ruble in commodities, and they're saying, we will take our own currency, but we will not accept the US dollar. And I think it's important for people to understand. Ladies and gentlemen, let's see, 2 days ago, 3 days, over the weekend, maybe over the weekend, going into Monday, Tuesday, a lot of very important people were flown to Moscow. Finance ministers, the most powerful financial people in the world. I'm not talking individuals. I'm not talking the tech pirates. I'm talking about, or the techno bandits. I'm talking about nation states who have a stake in wanting real currency. Germany is going to flip and get out of NATO. I'm telling you, when the German riots get so bad, and also France, and France isn't an official member of NATO, but when they get so bad because they don't have power, and it's not just staying warm, Doug, in the forgive me, winter, or staying cool with air conditioning in the summer. It's how do we run our industry? And Germany is watching, if you will, the subjugation of probably one of the most powerful economies. I would say this, when it comes to production, high technology and stuff, Germany's got to be listed in the top 3, in my opinion, okay? Top 3. And so what I see happening is, again, the brilliance of President Putin revaluing, in essence, his commodities in ruble. He's remonetized the ruble because everybody else didn't want to have anything to do with it because they had to deal with dollars. Remember, we watched Muammar Gaddafi murdered in cold blood because he wanted to change to gold. We watched absolutely, what is his name? Hussein We watched him murdered too. And everywhere that basically everywhere the petrodollar went, people were destroyed. And if you will, an imposition of a dictatorial party was put into place, the political place. And what you see following that is the abrogation and subjugation of so many men and women. So again, I want to make this clear. I'm not talking around the issue. What President Putin has done is execute the United States dollar, and it is going to come back to us in, well, I can't say that word. It's going to come back to us multiplied many times. And what happens, Doug? Now, here's a question to you, and I want you to answer this. What happens when everybody who's basically holding trillions of dollars in IOUs, when those IOUs are called due? How can a nation that's broke pay them? Go ahead.
Are you referring to the fiat currency? If you got a mattress full of $100 bills, is that what you're saying? Or okay.
Not only $100 bills, 50s, 20s.
Yeah, whatever.
T-bills, treasury bonds, and treasury notes.
Well,
what happens when anything dollar denominated, it doesn't matter, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, what happens? And anything dollar denominated when the rest of the world, I think it's up to 155 nations that have signed on to a secret agreement, say, we're not going to take the U.S. dollar anymore.
To me, that's when they switch to a digital currency and a complete, what is that, panopticon control surveillance grid. And
well, yeah, that's true. But basically, it'll be the repudiation of the U.S. dollar.
Yes.
That means your money won't buy any happiness. As a matter of fact, your money will be what they used to refer to as wheelbarrow money. The classic picture of the pre-Nazi rise of guy with a wheelbarrow with a gazillion dollars worth of Reich marks, or what I call the Z factor, the Zimbabwe factor. Because again, what happens when how do I say this? When the West gets involved in taking over production and distribution, most nations go broke. And I think that there are exceptions to that, especially the exception is when anybody gets a piece of the pie or take of the cut, or a cut, whatever they call it, a cut on the pie. So it's really important, in my opinion, that people understand this. Russia, and listen, I am pro-freedom. I'm also pro the truth. And I want to make it clear. I have warned and warned and warned. Our private briefings have given more specific detail. This isn't a pitch, but this is what my private briefing subscribers get from people in the know, been given more advanced understanding of Russia's technological superiority than the lies that come out of the Pentagram daily, the lies of the West, we're the greatest, or the idiot military positioning of taking on China and Russia at the same time, and basically, who is the president of the United States to dictate to the most advanced military superpower? I'm not talking about the beating up of the military, Russian military in Ukraine, 15,000 men dead, so many tanks. He's got one advantage. It's called hypersonic missiles. And until hypersonic missiles, that's not the only advantage, but hypersonic missiles are a big deal.
Our next guest is probably the most famous board member of a Ukrainian energy company of all time. His new memoir is called Beautiful Things. In case you've been wondering where he is, welcome Hunter Biden. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I have to tell you, after reading this book, I'm impressed that you're alive. I really am. It is amazing that you are alive after all the crazy things that you've been through.
It was a journey, but thank God I made it through.
Yeah, no kidding. And a lot of the things that you detail happened here in this neighborhood, like right around here.
Yeah.
It was like you were doing crack at the places that I eat.
Yeah. Well, I not intentionally. I wasn't stalking you.
No. I didn't think you were.
Here we go. Show me the money. Are the Bidens still getting paid by these foreign governments? They got money from China, Russia, and Ukraine. I'm trying to figure this out. And joining me now is the top of the line. Doesn't get any better than Peter Schweitzer, president of the Government Accountability Institute and author of Red Handed: How American Elites Get Rich Helping China Win. Peter, welcome back, as always, my friend. So let me ask a couple questions. I mean, Hunter Biden's interesting to me, but Joe Biden is more interesting to me for obvious reasons. Now, he was vice president, let's get to lay this out, 2009 to January 2017. They made money, they had cash flows, they made money from Russian deals, Chinese deals, Ukraine deals. Is there any way to figure out what he got? I know it was commingled. His money was commingled with his son Hunter's money. And you had this chap, what was it, Tony Bobulinski, who said, you know, save 10% for the big guy, quote unquote. So, Peter, is there any way to figure out how much Joe Biden got during that period when he was vice president?
Well, there isn't, Larry, without subpoena power, with actually looking at banking records. But you're quite right. I mean, the Hunter Biden laptop shows that Joe and Hunter had joint bank accounts in some cases. They had intermingled finances. We know that Hunter was paying his dad's bills, monthly bills, and also special bills like renovations on his home. And we also know that some money that Hunter Biden collected from China, at least $2 million, went to James Biden, Joe Biden's brother, and there may be money that went from James Biden to Joe Biden as well. So short of subpoena power and ability to look at financial records, we don't know. But we do know the Biden family itself received some $31 million from China, at least $5 million from Ukraine, and at least $4 million from China. But I think the numbers are much higher than that.
$4 million from Russia, $5 million from Ukraine, and 31 from China. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And when you look at who made these deals happen, Larry, that's even more alarming. In the case of China, we used the laptop to find out who actually made those deals happen for Hunter Biden and the Biden family, or as my kids would say, who made it rain for them. And we identified 4 Chinese businessmen who made those deals happen. Each and every one of them, Larry, have links to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence. So in one instance, a guy that helped Hunter secure a $20 million deal, at the same time he was helping Hunter Biden, he was business partners with the vice minister of state security in China. That's their spy apparatus. And his responsibilities as the spy agent was recruiting foreign nationals to spy for China. So this is not just corruption. This is very serious national security stuff we're talking about.
You betcha. And, you know, I'm reading through all your emails in your reports. And the basic time frame here, this is off the laptop, is 2010 to 2020, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was 27, whatever. But that's the period that Joe Biden was in office. And, you know, you just mentioned $4 million in Russia, $5 million in the Ukraine, $31 million from China. So that's, we'll call it $40 million in round numbers. And the only hard numbers we find, $4,300 for contracting and construction in the house. Mortgages were paid. I don't know how much. Phone bills were paid. So it's like, what happened to the other $39.9 million? And I can't help but think of Bobulinski, that the big guy had to get 10%. I mean, Peter, something, you know, show me the money. I know it has to be subpoenaed. Maybe we're going to need a special counsel for that when the Republicans win Congress. But there's something very suspicious and phony about this. And I'm even asking, I'll ask you, but I know it's impossible, I think, you know, is Biden Jr. completely divested of that China investment fund? And is Biden Sr. completely divested? Or is he still receiving money, still receiving dividends, royalties, Lord knows what?
Yeah, we don't ultimately know. What we do know, Larry, is the Biden family received a $5 million loan from a Chinese businessman. It was an interest-free, forgivable loan. So who knows what the status of that is? But it's really impossible to know. That's part of the problem here.
So you've got to subpoena these records and emails, including if there's a new laptop, right? I mean, that's what has to happen. Conservatives should just focus on that.
Yeah, and remember, we've got this grand jury in Delaware. I think one of the reasons that the Biden team cooperated with the New York Times in their recent piece about the grand jury is They're quite concerned that Hunter Biden is going to be indicted. He's being looked at by the grand jury for tax evasion, money laundering, violations of FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and possible political corruption. So I think they're quite concerned. And here's the problem. If there's a trial, it's going to start pointing fingers at Joe Biden. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they come back with a recommendation to prosecute, how that's handled by this Justice Department.
All right, that's a very important point. You're absolutely right. I just want to know, follow the money, cash flows, who's still getting what? I mean, that's just so important. Anyway, Peter Schweitzer, I hope you come back and keep reporting to us on this story.
Verse 13, but evil men and impostors will proceed from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. Paul said this 2,000 years ago. It's always the case. It's always the case. We have been living in the last days since the coming, death, resurrection, and ascension of Christ. That's when the last days began. This is the age of the Messiah. This is the time of trouble. This is a difficulty. This life is not supposed to be easy, because we don't live it for us. We don't live it for a home. We don't live it for new cars. We don't live it for all these kinds of things. We live it for Him, just for Him. That's it. You see, in the mind of God, Christ is not just something. He's not even just your Savior. The Son is everything. Everything was made for Him, by Him, for Him, for Him. Everything God has ever done, He's done for His Son. And the only reason you're going to heaven is because He loves His Son. Even in the old rabbinic literature, before the coming of Christ, the old commentaries and such, they would constantly say things like, everything is for Messiah. The whole world is for Messiah. The universe for Messiah. Everything for Christ. Everything is for Christ. Everything. And whether you're a minister or a carpenter or a businessman, it is the same. Because I have met carpenters and businessmen and others that were far more godly than I could ever hope to be. This is not about preachers. This is about everyone who calls on the name of Christ. Everyone.